Hello guys. Tonight, we begin with what happened when you visited a doctor in the Middle Ages. You wake to the sour smell of old sweat and rotting herbs, and you already know something is wrong. Your stomach aches, not the usual dog grumble from hunger, but a stabbing, twisting misery that makes you clutch your belly and moan softly. It's the kind of pain that means trouble in. You know this because everyone in your village who felt this kind of pain last summer didn't make it to winter. The house is dim and smoky, light barely slinking in through the warped wooden shutters. Your bedding is straw, and your pillow is a sack filled with chaff and the flattened carcasses of lice. There's no chamber pot, so someone, probably your sister, has dragged your limp body outside to relieve yourself behind the goat shed. Your skin feels clammy. Fever is rising. The edges of your thoughts are blurred. But here's the problem. You are poor. You live in a hamlet that doesn't even have its own priest, let alone a university-trained physician. And so, as your family hovers over you, whispering and worried, the question arises, who do we call when someone is this sick? It's not as straightforward as you'd imagine. In the Middle Ages, the very idea of a doctor was far more complicated, more dangerous than most people now realize. You might be seen by a learned physician, but only if you're rich and within walking distance of a monastery or a major town. More likely, you'll see a barber surgeon, a midwife, a local wise woman, or a traveling charlatan who swears by the healing power of roasted onion and goose grease. But even before that decision is made, your family must prepare your sick room. And that sick room is a place unlike anything modern patients would recognize. A medieval sick room is not sterile, it's not quiet, it's not even private. You are lying in the corner of the main living space, probably no more than one large, smoky room shared by your entire family and a few goats. Your straw mattress absorbs not just your sweat, but also any waste that dribbles from your body. There is no fresh linen. The sheets are stained from last year's illnesses. The smelling, eye-watering blend of sweat, mildew, cooked cabbage, and chamber pot overflows normal. The village doesn't think of it as foul. They think of it as human in the corner. Your mother starts heating a mixture of herbs over the fire mug word, sage, and comfrey, hoping to drive out whatever evil is inside you, 'cause that's how illness is understood here. It's not bacteria or viruses. It's imbalance, sin, bad air, or God's punishment. And sometimes it's simply the will of nature, or fate, or a spell cast by that one widow who always walks with her eyes down and her shawl too. Tightly wrapped, your father steps outside to look for help. He might walk a few miles to the neighboring village where a surgeon is known to live. Or he might knock on the door of a holy woman who is known to mix poultices that sometimes work. He will bring coin if he has it, bread if he doesn't, and sometimes just a promise to return the favor. The transaction is rarely clean. While you lie there, drifting in and out of consciousness, the room slowly begins to fill. It's first your family, then neighbors, some out of concern, some out of curiosity. A sick person is a spectacle, and your village is not burdened by ideas of privacy. Someone hangs a cloth soaked in vinegar over the door. They say it keeps out the bad air, the miasma that floats in from the riverbanks and rotting refuse. Someone else brings a candle from the church and lights it near your feet. The wax is blessed, which means the flame might keep demons at bay. Demons, after all, are not an unusual explanation for your affliction. A young boy, barefoot and filthy, whispers that he saw a fox limping near your house last night. That might mean you were cursed, or maybe it's nothing. But in a village like this, everything is a sign, but no one agrees on what the signs mean. Eventually, a healer arrives. Maybe it's a barber surgeon with blood still on his apron. Maybe it's a woman with yellow teeth and a pouch of dried frogs hanging from her belt. Whoever it is, they lean over you and look at your eyes, your tongue, your fingernails. They sniff your breath. They press your belly and listen to the sounds. They might collect your urine in a clear glass flask if they're of the more educated type. Hold it up to the light. Squint at its color, its cloudiness, its sediment. It's called uroscopy, and it's about as reliable as reading tea leaves. But for now, it's one of the most sophisticated diagnostics available. If your urine is pale, they might say you're cold and phlegmatic. If it's dark, perhaps you are overheated and full of black bile. These are the humorous blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Your body must keep them in balance. Right? That's the theory, at least. Your healer might suggest bleeding you, or applying leeches, or purging you with herbs that make you vomit and empty your bowels. There is no sense of comfort in this. Your treatment is violent, painful, and conducted with dirty tools. There is no sterilization. A knife is wiped on a cloth. Oboe is passed from patient to patient. If you scream, the healer might mutter a prayer or just tighten the grip. Pain is part of healing, they believe. Sweat is a sign that the bad humors are being driven out. Blood is a river of imbalance. The more that comes out, the better till you faint. And yet, this is how most people survive or don't. This is all they know by the time the doctor leaves. You are weaker, but the people around you are satisfied. Something has been done. The rituals of healing have been performed. The weather, or not, they worked. Only time will tell. The room darkens again. A candle burns. A bowl of broth cools beside your bed. Your mother hums a song from her own childhood, something about Saint Sebastian, and a boy who came back from the brink. But your fever climbs, and in the stillness, as rats rustle under the floor and your belly continues to churn, you wonder if this was what healing looks like. What does dying look like? The night is long. You wake often, never fully, and your body is never cool. The fever has settled into your bones now. The scratch of your tunic against your skin feels unbearable. Your mouth is dry, but your body feels wet shits clinging to you, sweat pooling in the hollow beneath your neck. And through the haze, you begin to wonder, why you? Why now? What went wrong? It is a fair question, and one that people in your time ask constantly with a mixture of fear and resignation. Because sickness doesn't come from nowhere, not in the medieval mind. It always has a cause, okay? And finding that cause becomes almost more important than treating the symptoms. The illness might pass, but the guilt, suspicion, and speculation could linger for years. To be sick is to be questioned, not only by healers, but by your neighbors, your family, even your own conscience. People will ask what you ate, where you went, whom you spoke to, what you touched. They will talk about your dreams, your sins, your attitude. Did you laugh too loud at the market? Did you forget to say your evening prayers? Did you insult the wrong person, or worse, think the wrong thing? You live in a world where natural and supernatural explanations are hopelessly tangled. Medicine exists, yes, but always alongside magic, sin, and the wrath of God. So let's begin where most medieval people would, with your own behavior. Perhaps if you've been overindulging, you are not rich, but if you manage to eat too much meat or wine during a festival, you may have thrown your humors out of balance. Overeating, especially of hot foods like beef or garlic, was thought to increase yellow bile, which in turn could lead to fevers, rashes, or even madness. If you've been sluggish or melancholy, the opposite might be true. Too much cold and wet food could have tipped you toward an excess of phlegm. Or maybe you've been neglecting your spiritual life, missed mass, failed to confess, spoken ill of the parish priest. For many, the soul and the body are intimately linked. Sign invites disease. Sickness is not just a punishment, okay, but a warning away for God to call you back to the righteous path. And it's not just your own sins that matter. The village remembers things. Strange glance you gave the baker's daughter. It's the goat that died after you touched it. The harvest that failed last autumn, just after your cousin married that woman from 3 valleys over. In an age without clear medical causes, anything can be a cause. And that opens the door to suspicion. Now, someone has surely whispered it. Witchcraft. It's a dangerous suggestion, but not uncommon. The sick often find themselves at the center of whispered rumors. If someone envies your garden, or your spouse, or your cow, it wouldn't take much for them to hint that maybe, just maybe, God, you've brought this illness on yourself through unholy means. Right? You made a deal with something you shouldn't have, or maybe someone else cursed you in revenge. Perhaps the healer who came yesterday had to mutter prayers not only for your health, but also for protection from the evil eye, from wandering spirits, from vengeful neighbors with dried poppy seeds and bitter tongues, and, if not, magic. Then maybe it was the air. Miasma is a popular explanation across all levels of society. Bad smells bring disease, people believe. Rotting waste, swamps, the stench of night soil, these all taint the air and make it dangerous to breathe. Your village doesn't yet understand bacteria or germs, but it sees the world through patterns. People who live near swamps get sick more often. People who live in cities, where the air is foul and thick with smoke, seem to die in greater numbers. Therefore, it must be the air itself. That's why people burn herbs, hang flowers, and wave perfumed cloths in front of their faces. Some stuff orange peels with cloves and wear them around their necks. Richer patients might light incense or burn sulfur. The poorest might rely on garlic and vinegar, both believed to purify the body and the space around it. The theory sounds strange today, but in truth, it's not far off in practice. The association between bad air and disease has some basis for sanitation, crowded conditions, decomposing organic matter, but without microscopes or germ theory, no one can prove it. And so, miasma remains both a medical and moral threat. The air is dirty, and so, perhaps, are you. Let's not forget the other major culprit, the stars. Astrology is not a fringe belief. It is medical doctrine. Learned physicians study the positions of the planets and the phases of the moon before prescribing treatment. If Mars is ascendant and Saturn is near, it might not be a good time for bloodletting. If the moon is full, your illness might be more dangerous. Some even draw up your natal chart to better understand how your body responds to imbalance. Even kings and queens consult astrologers before undergoing surgery or taking medicine. Universities include astrology in their medical curriculum. It's not mystical, it's clinical. So if you've fallen ill on the wrong day, under the wrong sign, there may be very little that even the best doctor can do. They might try, of course, cutting or purging or praying, but they'll do so with the knowledge that the heavens are working against them. But perhaps the most overlooked reason for your sickness, and the most tragic, is also the most boring. Your water, you drink from the same source as your animals. A shallow well, a stream that runs down past the grazing fields. There is no filtration, no boiling unless you're making broth. Human waste, animal droppings, moldy food scraps, all of it seeps into the soil or is dumped nearby. Illnesses like dysentery, cholera, typhoid, though not yet named, ravage entire communities with regularity. No one yet understands the connection. Some say the water tastes bad during plague years. Others notice that travelers bring new diseases with them. But few connect the dots between waste disposal, food handling, and infection. Washing your hands is a luxury, not a ritual. Baths are rare and usually cold. Fleas, lice, and rats are part of daily life, so it could be that your illness has nothing to do with sin or humors or planetary misalignment. It might simply be that you drank something you shouldn't have. ate something just past spoiled, or shared a bed with someone who carried a silent sickness. And that's the cruelest part, because even if you recover, no one around you will be satisfied with a simple answer like bad water. They'll want a story, a reason, a person to blame, a lesson to learn, and that story might follow you for the rest of your life. You might become the one who was cursed, the one who survived when they shouldn't have, the one who brought illness into the home, the one who took too long to die. These reputations stick. You may heal, but the suspicion, DOES, is single quotes, and so you lie there now, your fevered skin steaming in the morning light, or your sister whispers to the neighbor that maybe, just maybe, it all began the night you took the shortcut through the churchyard, or the day you accepted those strange berries from the old woman with the milky eye, because someone, somewhere, must be responsible. But if that's true, then the question becomes, how do you begin to cure an illness that started with a sin? Sun is up now, pale and useless behind a thin gray sky. A faint wind comes through the cracks in the shutter, carrying with it the scent of wet hay and wood smoke. You are still too weak to rise, but your thoughts have sharpened just enough to realize that no one really knows what to do next. The village healer tried her best. Yesterday burned herbs, a bloodletting, a salve smeared under your arms, but your fever has not broken. In fact, it's gotten worse. You've heard your family speaking in hushed voices. Your father left hours ago. They're sending for someone else, a proper doctor, they hope. But in the Middle Ages, what counts as a doctor depends entirely on your class, your location, and your luck. The word doctor is rarely used by common folk. They say healer, physician, surgeon, or just that man who helped the miller's boy once. And if you're lucky enough to live near a large town or monastery, you might have access to someone with a university degree. But that kind of access is limited both by distance and by money. You do not live in a city. You do not have coin. So your father will likely return with someone far more ordinary and far less trained. Still, let's imagine all the possibilities, from the highest to the most common dot. First, there are the university-trained physicians, almost always men, often educated in Italy, France, or England. They studied the classical works of Galen and Hippocrates, passed down and translated from Greek to Arabic to Latin, layered with commentary, preserved in parchment. These physicians rarely, if ever, touch the patient. Instead, they observe, they question, and they write. They interpret urine, they calculate astrological alignments. They prescribe regimens, what to eat, when to rest, which herbs to take. Their focus is on theory, not touch. These men are respected. They wear long robes and speak with authority. But they're also expensive, okay? And they reside in places where books are copied by candlelight and libraries are guarded behind stone walls. If you live in a poor village, this level of care may as well be on another planet. Next, you have monastic infirmarians, monks assigned to care for the sick within monasteries. They are not doctors in the academic sense, but they may be the most experienced medical caregivers in the region. Monastic healing is deeply tied to religion. Akina, the infirmary, is a quiet place filled with herbs from the cloister garden, prayers, and copied medical manuscripts. If your father walks far enough and humbles himself before the gatekeeper, a monk, may agree to travel to you. More likely, he'll be told to bring you to them if you survive the journey. Monasteries often avoid exposing their brothers to outside illness. Contagion is poorly understood, but isolation is still practiced, especially in places that have witnessed plague. Then there are the barber surgeons, whose skills span the practical and the terrifying. They cut hair, pull teeth, lance boils, bleed veins, and sometimes amputate limbs. They learn not from books, but from apprenticeship and repetition. Surgeons' knowledge comes from wounds, battlefield injuries, work accidents, ulcerated limbs. They're often feared as much as respected. Their tools are metal and brutal: saws, knives, hooks, and cautery irons. If your symptoms worsen, if your belly swells, your skin darkens, or you begin to bleed, your family may turn to one of them. Not because they want to, but because they must. A surgeon doesn't ask for your permission. He arrives, looks, nods, and begins. But maybe the person your father finds is not a man at all. Perhaps it is a wise woman, a herbalist, or a midwife. She might be older, sharp-eyed, and stubborn, with hands stained green from plant resins. Her knowledge has been passed down not through universities, but through generations. She knows where to find marigold and feverfew, when to harvest yarrow, and how to dry nettles. She can recognize a poisoned stomach, a festering wound, a miscarriage in progress. But even though her treatments sometimes can't work well, she lives in a dangerous position. Too much success, and she's accused of witchcraft. It's too little, and she's called a fraud. Either way, she walks a narrow line between healer and heretic. Your mother might know her already. They may have traded eggs for ointments, but calling her now, with your condition worsening, would mean admitting that things are serious. Then there are the itinerant, wandering doctors who drift from town to town. They set up shop in marketplaces, wearing bright clothes and carrying pouches filled dried snake skins, powdered bones, and miracle cures. They sell elixirs that promise to fix everything from baldness to back pain, infertility to infection. They speak loudly, smile widely, and disappear just as quickly. They are charlatans, but sometimes desperation doesn't care. And in between all these figures are the countless apothecaries who grind and mix, often without formal training. They're more common in towns, less so in rural villages, but they supply ingredients for both healing and harm. They keep lists of recipes copied from ancient texts, infusions, powders, oils, and tinctures. If your father can find one and convince him to part with something strong, it might buy you time. What matters, though, isn't the title of the person who comes to your bedside. It's what they actually do in many cases. There is little difference between a physician and a healer, a surgeon and a midwife. They all operate in the same fog of incomplete knowledge. Some rely on prayer, others on poultices, a few try leeches, and many depend on the body's ability to endure. And sometimes, doing nothing is considered treatment-led in nature. Take its course. For better or worse, as you drift again into sleep, you wonder who will walk through your door next. A learned man with a velvet bag, a blood-streaked butcher with a grim jaw, a whispering woman with herbs braided into her hair. You don't know, but someone is coming, because your father has not turned yet, and the sky is beginning to darken again. It's late afternoon now. The light's softer, more golden, filtering in through the cracked shutters and highlighting the haze of dust that floats endlessly in your one-room cottage. The fire in the hearth has gone out, leaving only a few glowing coals. You're dimly aware of your own body, not just from the aching in your gut, but from how heavy you feel, how wet with sweat, and how swollen your tongue is. Your mother dabs a damp cloth across your forehead, whispering some old prayer under her breath, the one her mother whispered to her when she was sick with ague. Then you hear footsteps on the packed dirt outside. Not your father's. He is still gone. This is someone else. Someone has come to examine you. She steps inside like she belongs here, brushing a clump of dried grass from her skirt. She is old, but quick, with eyes like steel and a quietness about her that isn't hesitation, but focus. You've seen her before, always on the edge of gatherings, with a pouch of leaves tied to her belt and twigs tangled in her apron strings. She doesn't ask for permission, She just sets down her basket beside you, reaches over, and gently lifts your eyelids. This is the diagnosis, not with machines, not with charts, but with color, smell, and taste. Because in the Middle Ages, diagnosis is a craft, a careful reading of the body's signs. The assumption isn't that illness is hidden deep inside, invisible. No, the body is loud. The body shows its imbalances, if only one knows how to look. The first and most sacred test is of your urine. Your mother fetches the clay pot you used earlier that morning, and the woman pours a little into a clear glass flask. It's narrow at the bottom, round at the top. She holds it up to the fading light near the window. She doesn't speak for several minutes, just watches as the cloudy fluid shifts and glistens, turning it this way and that like a jewel being inspected to her. This liquid is a map. She examines the color. Is it pale like morning straw or dark like old honey? A good golden tone suggests healthy digestion, but a redder hue or something closer to brown might mean heat or internal bleeding. Milky white might signal phlegm or even a problem with the kidneys. Blackish urine, that's feared. It means death is not far off. She studies the sediment, letting the flask rest still in her palm. If particles gather near the bottom, she will watch how long they take to settle. Floating flecks, that's a sign of wind, perhaps a disturbance in your spleen. Strings of white foam, you may have worms. She lifts it to her nose. Yes, the smell is also a clue. Does it stink of rot, sharp vinegar, sour milk? Each one corresponds to a theory of humors and organ function. And though not all healers do this, some will taste the urine. It's a drop on the tip of the tongue. It's sweet. It might suggest what today you would call diabetes. But back then, sweetness was thought to come from a surplus of yellow bile or disrupted digestion. To her, your urine is more revealing than a dozen confessions. Next, she touches your skin. Not gently, not with care, but like a person assessing the firmness of fruit at market. She presses here, under your ribs, then harder along your lower belly. Your breath catches. That hurts, she notices. Pain in that area, especially with fever, might suggest a blocked humor or worse. Your fingernails are pale. She lifts your arm. Your armpits smell sharp, accurate, and wrong. Sweat is supposed to be a release of poisons, but sometimes it is a sign of deeper imbalance. Then she leans down and breathes in near your mouth. Breath diagnosis is another medieval method. She's not looking for what you ate, but what your stomach is doing. Sweetness might suggest rotting food trapped inside. Sourness could mean bile. And the heavier the smell, the more she worries about your digestion being entirely stopped. She touches your eyes again, watching how fast your pupils react. She presses on the flesh under your eyes, looking for puffiness or discoloration. She opens your mouth and studies your tongue. Is it coated white, greenish? Is it too dry or cracked? These signs matter. They are considered to be the body's way of showing what lies inside. She asks your mother about your stools, the ultimate diagnostic tool. What color? How frequent? Was there blood? Mucus? She may even ask to see it herself, although your mother looks mortified at the thought. To the modern mind, this seems grotesque, but in your time, it is all part of a meticulous process of physical reading. No blood tests, no machines, just the knowledge that the body, in all its mess and odor, speaks clearly to those who know how to listen. And listen she does. She stands, now, quietly, holding the urine flask in one hand and a twist of dried leaves in the other. She looks not at your mother, but at you. You're hot, she says simply. Inside, too much bile. Fire in the stomach, driving the blood. Mad. This is a diagnosis grounded in the doctrine of the four humors, the dominant theory for centuries. Health is balance. Sickness is imbalance. You have too much of something. In your case, yellow bile. It is dry and hot, like fire. So you must be cooled. She rummages in her basket and draws out a pouch filled with dried herbs, marshmallow root, lemon balm, a few petals of chamomile, cooling herbs, ones that will calm the stomach and open the bowels. She instructs your sister to steep them in warm water and bring the cup to your lips before nightfall. You'll sweat more, she says, and maybe you'll vomit. To her, that is good, expelling heat, purging excess, letting the humors rebalance. You are to be left alone afterward. No meat, it's only broth. Sleep if you can. As she packs up her tools, she leaves a final warning. If the swelling begins, she says, if the belly turns hard or the eyes go yellow, you'll need to bleed him. And with that, she is gone. Your mother stares after her, lips thin. She does not fully trust the old woman. She never has. Neither does she have another option. The herbal drink is bitter. You gag on the second swallow, and your sister has to pinch your nose to make you finish it. You feel a strange lightness afterward. It's not better, but as if something inside you is shifting. Your stomach clenches again, and your throat burns, and, hour later, you vomit violently into a wooden bowl. Your family gathers. It smells terrible. Your color is no better. The sickness is leaving you. One breath, one spasm, at a time. Still, the question remains, was her diagnosis correct? And if she's wrong, how much time do you have before the next doctor decides to cut you open? Night again. It's not the soft darkness of a peaceful evening, but a thick, anxious blackness. The kind that seems to sit in the corners of the room, waiting. You are weak now, barely able to lift your head. The bitter herbs you swallowed earlier did what they were supposed to. Your body has expelled almost everything, but the fever burns on, undiminished. Your family watches you with helpless silence, and then, finally, the door creaks open again. Your father has returned. He is tired, clothes soaked in sweat, boots caked with the soft mud of the valley. He's not alone. Behind him steps a man in a thick leather apron, his sleeves rolled up and a heavy satchel slung over one shoulder. His hair is wild, flecked with gray and soot. His hands are stained red at the fingertips. A barber surgeon, unlike the healer who came yesterday. This man does not smell of herbs and earth, smells of metal, blood, sweat, and smoke like someone who has spent the last day carving meat rather than treating illness. He has. In fact, he is more butcher than doctor, and in the Middle Ages, the line between the two is astonishingly thin. This man, like others in his trade, cuts hair and trims beards by day. But when needed, he bleeds patients, lances, boils, removes infected limbs, and even performs minor surgeries. He does not have a university degree. He has worked with wounds, seen rot, felt the way muscle tears when a blade goes too deep, and now he stands in your cottage, scanning the room with a quick, practiced eye. He doesn't smile. He rarely does. Your father offers him a jug of ale. He takes a single swig and then kneels beside your bed. No words, just action. He opens his satchel and removes his tools. A small collection of gleaming, crude instruments is spread on a cloth knives of various lengths. A curved blade, a cautery iron, a wooden clamp, even a long-toothed saw. All of it smells like the last patient. There is no soap, no boiling water, no alcohol to sterilize the metal. In this time, sterilization does not exist. Theories of infection are centuries away. What kills a man is believed to be in the body already, not something introduced from outside. He grips your chin, turns your head, examines your pallor, your breathing. He asks no questions about dreams or demons. His world is physical. Flesh, blood, swelling, pus. He presses his hand hard against your stomach. You groan. He frowns. Then he makes his decision. You need to be bled, because to him, man, to nearly every medical mind in Europe, this is not only the expected treatment, it is often the first step. Illness is a storm inside the body. Blood is the river through which that storm travels. Okay? By removing a portion of it, the theory goes, you rebalance the body's humors and release the evil trapped within. He ties a leather strap around your upper arm to swell the veins. Your mother brings a candle closer. The flickering light reveals the glint of the blade he's chosen thin, short, curved just slightly. There's no pain relief, no numbness, no gentle warning. He finds the spot and slices quickly into the vein at the elbow. Blood spurts, dark and thick, into the small ceramic bowl below. You barely cry out. You're too weak. The bloodletting continues until the bowl is nearly full. He watches carefully, waiting for your lips to lose even more color, your breathing to slow, your eyelids to flutter. When he knows he's done enough, he binds your arm with rough linen and presses the cloth hard to stem the bleeding. Your pulse is weak now, your head swimming, but to him, this is good. It's a sign that the excess is leaving you. The fire of your illness, he believes, is being drained. After the bloodletting, T wipes his knife on his apron and sets it back in the bag with the others. Then, and only then, does he speak. Leave him quiet. Let him sweat. No meat. Water. If he can drink it, I'll return by sunrise. And that's it. He doesn't pray, doesn't linger, doesn't offer comfort. He doesn't need to. Key is not a priest, not a family man, not a comforting presence. Key is a tool, just like the ones in his bag, called when the body needs cutting, and forgotten when the blood stops flowing. As he leaves, he tells your father the price. It's more than your family can afford, but less than a coffin. That's always the balance. When he's gone, the silence in the room deepens. Your family waits, watches. Your mother sits beside you, silent tears tracing the cracks of her cheeks. She whispers stories from her childhood, how her brother was bled for fever and lived, how another neighbor was bled for a cough and died the next morning. It's impossible to tell whether the treatment helps. Sometimes patients recover. Sometimes they don't. But bleeding is used in almost every case of serious illness. And if you survive, people will say it worked. Again, too lightheaded to dream. And somewhere outside, you think you hear the rustle of leaves, a dog barking, bell ringing, far in the distance. But none of it matters. Your arm throbs, your skin burns, and all you can wonder is this: how did cutting you open become the first step toward healing? You wake at dawn. Your body is heavy, drained. Your lips are cracked, your tongue dry, and your arm aches from the wound where the barber surgeon bled you. The cloth bandage is crusted with dried blood. The bitter herbs from the night before still linger at the back of your throat. And your mother insists that you sip only a little water, nothing more, not until the fever breaks or worsens. The room smells faintly of blood and damp wood smoke, but it is strangely quiet. You can hear your father's slow breathing as he sleeps on a sack of straw nearby, and your younger siblings have been hushed and kept outside. Everyone is waiting, and as you lie still, too weak to move, but too restless to sleep again, you begin to wonder, why do they do these things? Why blood? Why herbs? Why does it all feel like guesswork wrapped in ritual? The answer lies in the most influential theory of medicine for over 1,000 years, the doctrine of the four humors. This ancient idea, originating with the Greek physician Hippocrates and refined by Galen, the Roman medical authority believes that your body is governed by four internal substances, or humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Each humor corresponds to elements, seasons, and temperaments. Health comes from balance, illness from imbalance. You have too much yellow bile. The healer said earlier, hence your fever, your sour stomach, your burning skin. The barber surgeon bled you to draw out excess blood, hoping it would rebalance your internal elements. In theory, your body is like a bowl to full what's harmful. It must be let out. But bleeding isn't the only method. When the surgeon returns just before noon, he brings a small cloth sack tied with string. He doesn't speak much, only gestures for your mother to bring a basin of warm water. From the sack, he pulls out a handful of sluggish black worms. They twist lazily, glistening in the dim light. Leeches, your younger brother gasps, wide-eyed, but is quickly shooed from the room. The surgeon places the leeches carefully across the inside of your arm, near the elbow wound from yesterday. You barely flinch. Your skin is hot, damp. The leeches latch on quickly. To him, this is refined bleeding, more precise, more controlled. Leeches feed until they drop off naturally, often taking an hour or more. They draw only a few tablespoons of blood, but it's believed to be a cleaner, more balanced form of release. Leeches are particularly favored for delicate places, behind the ears, near the temples, and even when needed inside the mouth. You doze in and out as they feed, and when he removes them, their swollen bodies are dark and heavy. He pinches their mouths to stop the bleeding, wipes the wounds, and burns the used leeches in the fire. Some healers keep them in jars to reuse, but others fear that a leech that's tasted sickness will pass it on to the next patient. The surgeon doesn't linger. He nods to your father, accepts a small piece of silver and a promise of eggs next week, and leaves. He won't be back. His job is done. But the treatment isn't over. The old woman, the herbalist who first examined you, returns later. That afternoon, she carries a thin-necked glass flask. Inside it, your urine, still cloudy and still strangely golden. She says she wants to boil it down to read it more clearly. Your mother doesn't question her. No one does. It's part of the ritual. She pours the urine into a small iron pot and sets it in the hearth. The room fills with an acrid, ammonia-heavy scent. Your sister gags. The herbalist doesn't flinch. This process is called uroscopy by evaporation. The idea is that by boiling away the water, you're left with only the essence, the solid sediment, which reveals the nature of your illness. When the liquid is gone, she scrapes the bottom of the pot with a wooden spoon. What remains is a chalky, granular paste. She lifts it to her nose and sniffs. Her expression is unreadable. She adds a few drops of vinegar and watches for a reaction. There is none. This tells her something. What exactly? You're not sure. Okay. But she murmurs that your liver is angry and your spleen sleeping. A few centuries from now, people will laugh at these ideas, but in this time, no one laughs. These organs are as mysterious and symbolic as stars. She crushes dried mint and dill with honey and vinegar, pressing the mixture into a small, wax-covered lump, and instructs your mother to smear it on your chest while you sleep. It'll draw the heat out, she says. Pull the fire through the lungs. Whether it works or not, you can't say. But the scent is soothing, and you do fall asleep in your dreams. The air is thick with smoke. Men and women carry bowls of blood and ash through torch-lit streets. You see yourself lying on a cold stone slab while leeches crawl across your face. Then a monk appears, whispering in Latin, holding a scroll of Galen's teachings above your head and reading them. Aloud, not to you, but to the wound itself. You wake again in the middle of the night, your limbs trembling, sweat pouring off you. Your sister says you screamed. Your fever has broken, or perhaps it hasn't. In the Middle Ages, this kind of illness, intermittent fever, stomach pain, delirium, could come and go in waves. Malaria, typhoid, dysentery, or even something like appendicitis. No one can say for sure. There are no names, only symptoms. The cause remains hidden. The treatment, vague. The outcome, uncertain. But the rituals persist. You are told to rest. Your diet is changed. No dairy, no meat. Only thin porridge made from oats, boiled for hours. Your mother adds a sprig of mint to the bowl. Not for flavor, but for balance. You are told not to bathe, not in cold water, not in hot. Bathing while sick is believed to open the pores too wide inviting in even more bad humors. Instead, your skin is rubbed with vinegar-soaked cloths. You shiver, but feel cleaner, briefly. You are not allowed to sleep too much, nor stay awake too long. You must be kept in balance, never too hot, too cold, too hungry, too full, too active. Still, your body, they believe, is always tipping, always veering off course. And these rules, these treatments, these observations of blood and bile and urine, they are meant to correct your course, steer you back to the narrow channel of health, even if they sometimes steer patients straight into the grave. You lie awake now, exhausted, your skin cooled by the early morning air. Your stomach still churns, your throat is sore from vomiting, and the dull ache in your side is not gone away. But you have survived another night, and yet you can't help but wonder if all this is based on balance. What happens when the treatments themselves push you too far in the other direction? The morning sun glances over the thatched roofs of your village, golden but faint. It brings with it the promise of another day, and you are still alive to see it. That fact alone is worth something. Yet your body is far from well. That had surged so violently has cooled. Yes, but you feel thinner somehow, as if scraped out from the inside. The fire's gone from you, your mother whispers, as she smooths your hair. The sweating worked. The bleeding worked. She says it with more hope than certainty, but no one questions her. To do so would be to question all that has been done. But in truth, you don't feel well. You feel weak, dim at the edges. You're too tired to rise. The softest noise startles you, and somewhere in the bottom of your belly, a strange tightness has settled, as if something has gone missing. Not the illness itself, perhaps, but something that had kept your body intact. In the Middle Ages, this too is common. The feeling of being worsened by the cure itself. There is no real concept yet of overtreatment, at least not as we understand it now. But even in your time, people quietly fear that sometimes the remedies do more harm than the illness. 8. They whisper about it. Neighbors exchange glances when a patient declines after a second round of bloodletting. Families speak in hushed tones about healers who bled the butcher's son too thin, or gave the priest's niece so many herbs that her heart stopped in her sleep. And though no one would dare say it aloud, especially not in front of the barber surgeon or the herbalist, there are signs everywhere that too much treatment can be as deadly as the sickness itself. You've now been bled twice, once with a knife, once with leeches. You've been purged through vomiting. You've been denied food, sleep, and warmth, all in the name of balancing your humors. You've had your urine boiled, your sweat collected in cloths, your stomach examined by touch and smell, and still, you are sick. People assume that the body is endlessly elastic, that it can be manipulated back into harmony, like a clock. But in truth, your body is fragile, already depleted. It's not just the illness you're fighting, the treatments, too. The doctrine of the four humors guides everything, but it lacks feedback. When one treatment fails, the answer is often to do it again, just harder, more bleeding, more bitter herbs, another dose of laxatives, or, failing all else, the application of fire, yes, cauterization. Not always to seal a wound. Sometimes it's used on unbroken skin as a way of drawing the poison to the surface. Heated irons or burning poultices pressed against the spine, the belly, or the soles of the feet. The theory is simple and terrifying. Fire purifies. So, if illness is a corruption deep within, then heat might force it out. You've not yet reached that stage, but you've heard of it. Everyone has. They say a merchant's boy in the next village had a wasting sickness. That would not leave him, no matter how much wine, wormwood, or wild sage they gave him. In the end, the healer brought a rod fresh from the coals and pressed it into the boy's back. He screamed so loudly that dogs began howling across the fields. He lived, but he never stood straight again. It is said as a story of success, but when your cousin whispered it to you a month ago, before your illness, you both agreed. It sounded more like punishment than medicine. Then there are the dangerous herbs plants, known to bring relief, but only if measured with exquisite care. Mandrake, henbane, belladonna. These are sometimes used to dull pain or induce sleep, but a pinch too much, and the line between sleep and death blurs quickly. The problem is that no one has a scale. Everything is measured by eye and experience. A handful, a pinch, leaf the size of a fingernail. If your herbalist has a steady hand and good memory, the dose might soothe your aching belly. If her hands shake or her thoughts drift, you may never wake up at all. This is why many prefer simpler remedies: onions, boiled in vinegar, eggs, honey, water, barley gruel with mint. Not because they work better, but because they don't kill. You think? Now of the apothecary your father passed on the road to the town. A man who deals in powders, oils, and preserved animal parts. Some say he's gifted, others say he's reckless. He once gave a woman crushed sapphire to relieve her melancholy. She died vomiting blue foam, but another man claims the apothecary cured his wife's seizures with powdered pearls and fig syrup. There's no consistency, it's only chance, because in your world, no healer is completely trusted. One has seen a cure fail. Everyone has heard of someone who got worse after seeking help, and so some people avoid treatment altogether. You know of a shepherd who won't let anyone touch him when he's sick. The body knows what it's doing, he says. Gith. At time, he drinks nothing but water, refuses herbs, and sleeps near the fire until the fever breaks. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but when he lives, he boasts that it was his body, not the doctor's, that brought him back. Your mother doesn't believe in that kind of thinking. She says, God helps those who accept help. Teve, her muttering to herself, glancing at the fire, watching you sweat. She's beginning to wonder, because even now, your strength isn't returning. The food doesn't sit right. Your belly is tender. Your chest feels tight. And though your skin is cooler, your eyes feel wrong. Too heavy. Too hot. At what point, you wonder, does healing become harm? How much blood must be spilled before someone says, enough? You hear footsteps outside again, another healer, or someone bringing news of another patient lost, or is coming to ask if you're ready for extreme measures. The footsteps outside aren't hurried. They crunch slowly over the gravel path, then pause near the doorway. Someone knocks, not loudly, not urgently, but just enough to stir your mother from her post by the hearth. She opens the door a crack, murmurs something to the person outside, and then slips out, closing the door softly behind her. You are alone again. The room is dim. Only a few embers glow in the fireplace, casting long shadows across the low ceiling beams. Your arm still aches from the cut, and your lips are dry despite the damp cloth your sister laid across them an hour ago. There is a strange stillness in your chest, as if the fever's fire has cooled, but something deeper is rising in its place. It's a quiet, heavy stillness. It's like the silence that comes just before a storm breaks. You cannot move much now. Your limbs feel like sacks of barley. Even lifting your hand is an effort, but your ears work well enough, and you listen for every sound. The rustling of your mother's voice outside. The soft knock of your sister's spoon against the rim of a wooden bowl. The faint creak of the wind tugging at the shutters dot. Then, you hear it, the word you feared might be next. Pilgrimage. The voice is your uncle's. Firm, low, decisive, as if the question had been waiting in the air all along, and now, finally, someone has spoken it aloud. Because when bleeding, leeching, purging, sweating, herb steeping, and urine boiling fail what's left, the answer for most people in the Middle Ages lies not in the body, but in the soul. Healing. They believe ultimately comes not from surgeons or herbs, but from God. And when a body resists earthly remedies, it is often assumed that the cause of the illness lies beyond this world, either as punishment for sin, a test of faith, or even as the influence of something darker, a demonic presence, a cursed object, or the evil eye. You are no sinner, a tease, but neither are you a saint. And that, in this world, is enough to cause concern. So now the conversation turns to the spiritual cures, the religious ones. Not just prayer, but action, pilgrimage, relics, holy water. Forgiveness. Your father comes in quietly and places a wooden stool beside your bed. He takes your hand, not in fear, but in decision. We'll go to the shrine, he says. If you can travel, we'll go. He doesn't say which shrine. There are several near enough to reach on foot or by cart, but none of them close. There's a small chapel at the edge of the forest where St. Aurid's tooth is kept in a glass case. They say a woman once touched the tooth and was cured of blindness. Others whisper about the spring beyond the river where the bones of a forgotten hermit lie buried. Pilgrims drink from its waters, and sometimes, they say, the sick wake healed the next morning. Then there's the relic of St. Margaret in the town beyond the hills, her veil now yellowed and frayed is believed to bring peace to the dying. Your grandmother once made the journey to lay a newborn against it. The child still lives. It was 15 winters ago. These are last efforts, but in truth, they are often chosen far earlier in the process. Medieval medicine was never purely physical. It was always interwoven with the sacred. Illness was not just a breakdown of the body. It was often a disruption of divine order. And healing could come just as easily from a prayer said in earnest as from a knife held steady. The village priest is summoned. He is old, bent-backed, with a beard like tangled wool. He smells of wax and wine and damp wood, and his fingers are covered in ink from copying texts. He kneels by your bed and prays softly, his words Latin, but his tone comforting. Your mother and sister kneel beside him. Your father stands near the door, head bowed. Silent, the priest anoints your forehead with oil of the Sikha mixture of olive oil and consecrated blessing. He draws the cross gently across your brow, your chest, your palms. The oil is cool, and for a moment, the dizziness fades. He murmurs a prayer of healing, asking not only for your body to recover, but for your soul to be cleansed of doubt, fear, or any impurity that may be causing your suffering. He speaks not as one who commands, but as one who pleads. He then leaves behind a small parcel, a thin scrap of cloth said to have been touched to the robe of a saint. It's tied with a red string, if you are to wear it against your skin beneath your linen shirt. It may protect you, or comfort you, or simply reassure those watching you with such worry. That night, your family discusses the journey again. Your aunt has a handcart. She offers to line it with wool and cloth, make it soft enough for you to lie in. Your mother fears that jostling will worsen you. But your father says staying here and waiting is no better. And what do you think? You are too weak to speak. But your mind spins through 100 images-deisty roads, winding rivers, candlelit shrines, and silent saints carved in stone. What does it mean to place your health in the hands of a relic, a holy bone, a piece of cloth? What if it works? What if it doesn't? For thousands across Europe, pilgrimages are the only medicine they ever seek. Some journey across countries to reach the bones of St. James in Compostela or the blood of Christ in Bruges. They walk not just for healing, but for forgiveness, for answers, for miracles. And miracles do happen, at least according to the ledgers. Towns near shrines record hundreds of cures. Broken legs mended, fevers vanished. Children who could not speak suddenly singing. Of course, skeptics exist. Even in your time, there are whispers that some miracles are exaggerated. But when medicine fails, the idea of divine healing becomes not just hopeful, but necessary. Your sister asks quietly, "Will he die if we wait too long?" No one answers. Instead, your father gathers what coin he has left, and your mother begins packing the boiled oats, a flask of water, and a relic cloth, whether your body can survive. The journey or not is now beside the point, because when everything has been tried, knife, herb, leech, and fire, one thing remains: faith. And as the candle near your bed flickers lower, and the dawn begins to color the edge of the sky, you wonder quietly to yourself, if God does not answer, who will? It is morning, and the day is cool enough to keep the flies at bay. Your mother has wrapped you in 2 linen blankets and laid you gently into the back of your aunt's handcart, the one she normally uses to carry firewood or bundles of thatch. Today, it carries a boy who might be dying, though no one says that aloud. The cart creaks and jerks with every uneven stone in the road. Your limbs are too weak to tense against the bumps, so you move with emotion like a rag doll. A wool-stuffed pillow cushions your head, and the little saincloth relic rests on your chest beneath your shirt, tied there with a red string. You don't know the name of the saint. Maybe no one does. It came from someone who knew someone, and that is often enough. Beside you walks your father, boots worn, hands calloused, eyes alert. He glances at you every few steps. Not with panic, he's past that stage, but with the quiet tension of someone trying to believe and hope. This, now, is your pilgrimage. The shrine is nearly a day's walk, if you were healthy. In your state, it may take twice that. Your family can't afford a horse, and the roads are barely passable to begin with deep ruts from wagon wheels. Patches of soft earth turn to sucking mud from summer rain. You pass peasants with baskets, a tinker with his tools, a girl herding goats, not in recognition. A few make the sign of the cross when they see you, not out of pity, but habit. Pilgrims, especially sick ones, must be protected from envy and curses. Some people believe that the devil targets the weak when they journey toward holy ground. As the cart bumps forward, you drift in and out of consciousness. At times, you are lucid enough to hear the birdsong in the hedgerows or feel the warmth of the sun on your face. Other times, everything is spinning the sky. The cart, your own chest rising and falling in 2 shallow breaths. You dream of candles and blood, of a wooden shrine glowing with gold, of faces peering down at you with eyes made of painted glass. The path winds through forests and over shallow streams. By midday, your father lifts you from the cart to let the mule drink and to rest your limbs. You lie in the grass, staring up at the treetops. A breeze stirs the leaves and sends a shiver down your spine. Your mother offers you water from a clay flask. You drink, it tastes like wet stone, but you don't complain. Later, as the sun dips low, you pass through a village smaller than your own. A few curious children run alongside the cart until they're called back. One old woman asks where you're headed. St. Alred's Tooth, your father says. She nods solemnly. My cousin went there for the boils. That's all, she says. No one ever explains whether the journey ended in healing or burial. The shrine finally comes into view near dusk the next day, nestled in a fold of low hills beside a crumbling stone chapel. The building is crooked and small, its bell tower cracked, but it is surrounded by pilgrims. You see them resting by the spring, bandaging feet, boiling water, offering prayers. Some are on crutches. Others carry small children in swaddles. A few wear ropes around their waists, or carry burden stones, branches, wooden crosses, acts of penance. The chapel houses the tooth of St. Alred, a 12th century monk said to have cured the sick with his words alone. No one knows for certain if it's truly his tooth. It sits in a gold-trimmed reliquary on a raised stone platform behind thick glass flanked by 2 wooden candlesticks. Pilgrims kneel before it. Some pray, some cry. Some just stare, as if waiting for something unseen to stir in the air. Your father carries you inside. It's dark and musty, and the air smells of wax and damp cloth. He places you gently near the relic, onto a patch of rushes spread across the stone floor. Your mother kneels beside you. She doesn't speak, just folds her hands and bows her head. Others move around you, making way, showing reverence, not to you, but to the act being done. The monk tending the shrine approaches. He's young, thin, with sunburned skin and a hesitant manner. He doesn't question your family. He's seen hundreds like you before. He opens a small silver vial and dips his finger in what he says is water mixed with dust from St. Irid's tomb. He touches your brow with the mixture. You don't feel it. Then he begins to pray. The words are slow, ancient, and in Latin, but you recognize the cadence. Saint Alreid, ora pro nobis. Saint Alreid, pray for us. Your mother joins in softly. So does your sister. The monk asks your father to place your hand gently on a reliquary. He does. Your fingers rest against the cool glass. That is the moment. Not a miracle, but a ritual. A moment of stillness. The quiet belief that something greater may act. Now that you've made the effort, you stay the night in a pilgrim shelter near the shrine just. A roof over rushes, open to the air. Your family wraps you tightly in linen and lets you sleep. Other pilgrims sleep beside you. A man missing a leg. A girl with oozing sores. A woman too weak to sit up. It's not a place of peace. It's a place of waiting. In the middle of the night, your fever returns, not in a blaze, but as a slow, crawling heat. It rises from your chest like smoke from a dying fire. Your stomach cramps. Your throat is dry. Your fingers twitch. The relic did not bring immediate healing. That happens only in stories told too many times. You whisper something to your mother. She leans in close. I'm cold. She pulls the blanket tighter. You shiver, despite it. Outside, the wind picks up. The bells on the chapel tower clang softly, pushed by the breeze. You wonder what you're supposed to feel. Relief, peace, appointment. You made the pilgrimage. You touched the relic. You said the prayers, and still your illness lingers. Not as violently, perhaps, but present. What now? What happens when even faith doesn't cure you? The morning after the shrine visit is gray and still. Rain has passed quietly in the night, leaving the earth soft and the air heavy with the scent of wet stone and crushed grass. You awaken, or rather stir, beneath the linen sheets in the pilgrim shelter. Your body is stiff, your skin clammy, your mind thick with fog. The heat in your chest hasn't left you, it has settled there like a sleeping coal. It smolders, quietly, relentlessly. Your family packs slowly. It's little to prepare. The spring water near the chapel is collected. The prayer candles are burned down 2 puddles of wax, and your mother rewraps the saint's cloth against your chest. But no one speaks of miracles this morning. The shrine didn't fail you, it simply didn't change anything, or at least, not yet. As your father wheels the cart back onto the road home, your sister says nothing for the first time in days. Her face is pale, watchful. Kay, your mother walks behind, lips moving quietly in a whisper that could be prayer or worry, or both. Your journey has shifted. It began as a bid for healing. Now, it feels like a retreat. When you arrive at the edge of your village a day later, the welcome you expected is not waiting. Instead, you're met with hesitation. It starts with a miller's wife. Kay sees the cart from a distance and turns her back, leading her son away by the hand. Kay, the cobbler, who always greets your father with a wave, closes his shutters. A neighbor approaches, then steps back when he sees your pale face. They've heard. Cart, your aunt says softly as she guides the cart over a patch of stony ground. They think you might be contagious. You don't understand at first. The word is new to you, or at least used differently now. In your world, people don't know about bacteria or viruses, but they do know that sickness moves through homes, through streets, through villages, like a creeping fog. They don't understand how it spreads, that it does, and fear moves faster than any illness in some towns. The sick are quarantined, a term taken from the Italian quarantagiorni, 40 days. 40 days of isolation for ships suspected of carrying plague. The rule is born from ports and seafaring, but it spreads inland with terrifying speed. In your village, no one has official laws, but the practice is real. If someone is ill, you keep your distance. If a household is stricken, the doors might be locked or marked. Neighbors will leave food at the threshold, but no one will knock. You've heard of families being walled into their homes, literally sealed shut. If the sickness is feared to be the pestilence, you are not a plague victim, at least not in the sense people know. But your symptoms, fever, weakness, shivering, resemble too many other dangers. And you have just returned from a shrine, from other sick people. That alone is enough to turn suspicion into fear. So your father speaks to the village elder, not the priest, not the reeve, just the old man who sits near the well and remembers everything. He's the one people listen to in times like this, and the verdict is given. You must not come home yet, not to your house, not to the village center, not for another 7 days. Your mother argues, gently but firmly. He's not coughing blood, she says. He hasn't any sores, just a fever, just weakness. But that's not enough. 7 days. In the field, outside the village, near the old charcoal burner's hut. Your father says nothing, but you see it in his face. He's not angry. He's ashamed. Not of you, but of what the world becomes when illness enters it. They move you to the hut. It's just before sundown. It's little more than a wooden lean-to, roofed with moss, walls open to the wind. On 2 sides, there's a bench inside, and someone has already left a bundle of straw and a skin of water, a few loaves of bread, a strip of salted meat. That is the village's compromise. Fear softened with charity. Your mother stays. She refuses to leave. You alone. She brings her own blanket and kneels beside the straw. She doesn't sleep that first night. You can hear her whispering psalms long after the crickets have gone quiet. By the next morning, a second child is sick. Not yours, not your sister. A boy from down the hill. It's fever, shaking, vomiting. No one blames you out loud. No one has to. The village has no physician, no university-trained doctor. Only the local herbalist who keeps her distance now. She leaves small bundles of herbs at the edge of the meadow, but doesn't cross into your line of sight. On the 3rd day, 2 more villagers fall ill. The whispers grow. That night, your father visits, alone. He keeps his distance, stands at the edge of the firelight, speaking only in hushed tones. They're afraid, he says. They're talking about shutting the gate. Your village has no walls, no gate, but in times of pestilence, towns build makeshift fences from carts, wood, and stone. Post watchmen, they turn away travelers. They dig ditches around homes and fill them with lime. Anything to keep sickness out or in. They don't blame you, he adds. But they don't want you back yet? You don't cry. You haven't the strength. Your body aches. Your breath still feels shallow, and your stomach has turned sour again. But something else begins to ache that night. Something deeper than your chest or your limbs. Your sense of belonging. You are not a leper. You are not a criminal. You are not marked by any law, but you are sick. And that is enough. On the 4th night, someone leaves another bundle of food by the footpath. A piece of bread, a sprig of rosemary, tiny wooden cross. You don't touch it. Your mother burns the rosemary, She tells you stories instead of the healer who once lived 3 towns away, who wore gloves made of sheep gut and never caught the pestilence, of a woman who recovered from a wasting sickness after being shut away for a full month, of a child who dreamed of a saint and woke, healed, stories of survival. The only medicine left when the village turns its back on the 5th day. Your fever lessens again, not gone but quieter. Your mind clears enough to hear the birds in the hedgerow, the rustle of leaves, the distant sound of tools against stone in the village beyond. Life continues, just out of reach. You ask your mother, softly, if I recover here, alone and forgotten, will I ever truly return? The 6th morning in the meadow arrives, not with birdsong or sunlight, but with the dull ache of your own breath. It's not pain exactly, but a heaviness in your chest, as though your lungs are still deciding whether to keep trying. The skin is slick with sweat, but your forehead is cool. You've had no vomiting since yesterday, no delirium, no visions of saints. For the first time in weeks, your eyes focus without swimming. You are, you think, getting better, or at least you are not getting worse, and that the Middle Ages is often the most one can hope for. The human body, once broken by sickness, rarely snaps back to health with any speed. There are no antibiotics, no 4 drips, no hospital beds. Recovery is slow, uneven, and uncertain days of relative peace followed by sudden spirals downward. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Your mother stirs beside the dying fire, rising stiffly from where she has slept, half sitting. Her eyes are shadowed with sleeplessness, but her voice is steady as she brings water to your lips. You'll be all right, she murmurs like a prayer. You'll see. And in that moment, you believe her. You have to. Each day in the field becomes an exercise in careful patience. The food remains simple bread, softened with water, broth, made from bones and boiled barley, a few wild herbs. A passing shepherd, braver than most, offers a small bowl of used milk through the hedgerow. Your mother accepts it with quiet thanks. The warmth and fat of it settle your stomach for the first time in days. You begin to sit up, slowly, propped by a straw pillow. Your legs still feel foreign, untrustworthy. Your hands tremble. Your head spins if you turn too quickly. But there is progress, and that is everything. And yet, recovery is not just physical. Your thoughts drift often, not just to what happened to you, but how it happened. You've been bled, burned, leeched, purged, prayed over, touched by relics, and cast out, all in the name of healing. You wonder which part of it helped. Was it the bleeding, the herbs, the saint's tooth, solitude, or did your body simply outlast the sickness on its own? This is a question no one in your time can answer, because medicine in the Middle Ages isn't built on controlled trials or double-blind studies. Okay, it is built on reputation, ritual, and the stubborn hope that anything might work. Most people believe that healing is a process of rebalancing, not just the humors, but the soul. So much illness is seen not just as a physical affliction, but as a result of sin, imbalance, or divine will. Crooked spine might mean an impure heart. Okay? Wasting sickness might be punishment for a lie told. A fever might be a test of patience or a curse from someone envious. And in that world, healing becomes a deeply moral process. You must accept the suffering, learn from it, endure it, pray through it. If you recover, it is because you were meant to. This belief cuts both ways. On the one hand, it gives people comfort. They see illness as meaningful, not random. It connects their suffering to something larger, God's plan, the balance of the world, the cycles of the stars. But on the other hand, it breeds shame, guilt, the quiet fear that you somehow brought this on yourself. Even now, as your mother brushes your hair back and checks your pulse against the hollow of your neck, you feel it, the strange weight of having been sick, like a crime that's already been punished. but not yet forgiven. What's more, being ill separates you, not just from health, but from your own community. Friends avoid you. Strangers fear you. The people who once called your name now pretend not to see you. Ain't. In their eyes, you are no longer simply a child recovering from a fever. You are a vessel of danger, and even when your fever fades completely, that fear will linger. You've heard of people who returned home after plague or pax and were never quite welcomed again. Not because they were still sick, but because they had passed too close to death, touched something others were terrified of. You are not contagious anymore, but try telling that to a mother with a newborn or a baker who sells bread by hand. And so, recovery in this world is not a finish line. It is a negotiation, a slow re-entry into the rhythm of ordinary life. One step, then another, until people forget you were ever on the edge. On the 7th morning, your mother goes to speak with the village elder again. He listens, nods. No new cases have appeared since the 3rd day. The fever seems to have passed. No one died. No one else has left for the shrine. The panic, once a wildfire, settled into smoke. Your father arrives that evening with a small wooden bowl carved just for you and a loaf of bread still warm. He helps you into the cart, not for a journey to another shrine, but for the final, short trip home. The road feels different now. Not harder, but more uncertain. You are not the same person who left this way 2 weeks ago. You were carried here, weak and silent, nearly fever-mad. Now you return thinner, quieter, changed. Children peek at you from behind shutters. Oh, a neighbor nods. The cobbler raises a hand in greeting, but doesn't come close. Your mother lifts you gently into the house. The hearth is still warm. The air smells of soap and thyme. Your bed is made. You lie down and you wait, not for the fever to return, not even for your strength, but for the moment when everything stops feeling fragile, and you wonder if healing is a return to life. What does it mean when that life no longer fits you? The doctor comes back 3 days after you've returned home. It's not the priest, not the herbalist, not the monk from the shrine, but the same barber surgeon who first took your blood and examined your urine, who brought his leeches and theories in handfuls of boiled instruments. You hadn't asked for him. No one had. But still, here he is, standing at the threshold of your house in his leather boots, coat stiff with travel dust, hands clean but cracked from his work. He doesn't knock. He clears his throat. That's enough. Your father greets him cautiously. He's alive, he said simply. Not as gratitude, not as accusation, just fact. Good, the doctor replies. Then, as if ticking a mental box, he steps inside. You're sitting by the hearth this time, propped on cushions, a thin broth resting in your lap. You're thinner than before. Your arms are stringy, and your cheekbones show in ways they didn't 2 weeks ago. But you're alert, okay? And that, in this world, is often the first and best measure of recovery. The doctor eyes you as he would barrel a fish at market. Color's better, he mutters. No tremor. Breathing's clear. You nod, slowly. He asks to see your tongue, feels your pulse again. His fingers are colder than you expected. He lifts the edge of your shirt to press his palm against your belly. Then he frowns, not from alarm, but from calculation. The heat has passed, he says at last. The imbalance was corrected. Howard said, not you recovered, but the imbalance was corrected. As if your body were a barrel tipped too far and now leveled again. Not a miracle, not even your doing. It's just the natural result of a mechanical process he had some hand in adjusting. He doesn't ask about the pilgrimage, or the priest, or the isolation in the field. He doesn't ask how long you spent burning with fever or shaking through the nights. And he certainly doesn't ask what it felt like to be marked as dangerous and watched like fire near. A dry straw dot his interest lies only in outcomes. You are sitting upright, eating, and answering questions. The rest is, for him, noise. This, too, is how medicine often works in the Middle Ages. Follow-up is rare. Reflection is rarer still. If a patient recovers, the treatment is credited. A patient dies, the cause is usually said to be too deep, too far gone, or God's will. There is little room for error, and even less for learning from it. The doctor doesn't record your case. There is no notebook, no archive, no accumulation of experience that might change how he treats the next boy in your position. Medicine is still personal, oral, passed from mentor to apprentice, rarely written down unless it's part of a grand theory, one that originated not from patients, but from ancient texts. Still, he seems faintly pleased with himself. He accepts a cup of cider from your mother, comments that your urine should be cleared of sediment by now, and mentions that if the heat returns, more root tea might be advisable. Then, just as quickly as he arrived, he leaves. No fee is mentioned. No coin is exchanged. Perhaps your father paid him already. Perhaps your mother gave him bread or wool in barter. Perhaps he simply wanted to see the result of his earlier decisions. Not for your sake, but his. You lie back in your seat by the fire. The room is quiet again. Outside, the village has begun to accept you once more. The neighbors, who turned away when you returned, now offer cautious greetings. One leaves a basket of apples at your door. Another, your friend from the next field over, asks your sister whether you might come outside soon. Not yet. Your legs still tremble when you try to stand. Your muscles, so long dormant, protest every movement, port the idea that you will stand that. You might walk again to the field, or down the road, to the well that is becoming more real. Your mother marks your improvement in small ways. You're sleeping with fewer shivers. You finished your broth today. You laughed this morning, even if it made you cough. She doesn't talk about the fever itself, or the worst nights, or the part where she thought she might lose you, because healing for families is also an act of forgetting, not the illness entirely, but the terror, the helplessness, the feeling that nothing, no doctor or priest or shrine could reach you when you were most lost. In time, you will. Forget too. Not all of it, but enough. You'll remember the leeches with a kind of curiosity. You'll forget how they felt on your skin. You'll remember the relic and the prayers, but not the shivering hours beside the shrine. You'll remember that people feared you, but not how cold the meadow nights were when you lay alone with your mother, waiting for a sign that your body had chosen to live, because in this world, recovery isn't a clean line. You are not healed. You are healing. There's no final test, no all clear, only the slow return of appetite, the strength to lift a stool or laugh without pain, the moment someone touches your shoulder without pulling away. Those are your signposts. And still, you find yourself wondering, was it the doctor who saved you? The prayers? The rest? The herbs? Or just time? Okay? And does it even matter if the result is the same? Okay? You sit by the hearth long into the evening, staring into the flames. You can feel your heartbeat now steady, even, no longer fluttering like a bird under your ribs. Your hands no longer shake. You breathe deeply and feel the warmth settle inside you. The sickness has passed, but in a world where no one knows what truly works, where even healers don't agree on what healing is, a quiet question still lingers in your mind. If I were to fall ill again tomorrow, would the same treatments save me twice? The first time you walk again, it's only from your bed to the wooden stool by the hearth. It's a distance of barely 6 paces, and yet, by the end of it, you're winded, sweating, and quietly stunned by the weight of your own body. Your sister claps. Your mother cries. Your father pretends not to look up from sharpening a knife, but his hands pause just long enough to betray him. Everyone is relieved. And yet, No one is quite sure what comes next, because surviving illness in the Middle Ages is only the first part of a much longer process. Once the fever breaks, once the sweating stops, once the leeches are thrown away and the prayers fall quiet, you are still not whole. You are a convalescent, a half-healthy, something between sick and well. And you might stay that way for months. You sleep more than you used to, sometimes 14 hours in a day. You wake groggy, limbs full of sand, head wrapped in wool. Your appetite returns in waves. Some days you beg for second helpings, and others you can barely stomach the sight of broth. Your hands tremble when you hold a spoon. Your feet swell from too much standing. And most troubling of all, your memory skips. Whole conversations vanish. Days blur together. Your sister tells you that you shouted names in your sleep that you don't even recognize. These are not rare symptoms. In fact, most people who recover from major illness in your world carry the after effects for years, or even a lifetime. The language of your time doesn't call them side effects or post-viral syndromes. It simply accepts that once your body is wounded by disease, by bleeding, by invasive treatments, it might never be the same again. Some people limp forever after a fever. Some lose the strength in their hands. Some are never again free from shaking, coughing, or pain in the joints. In older men, illness can be the start of a long, quiet decline. In children, it can leave them stunted, nervous, or not quite right. There are no therapists, no structured care plans, just the patient and the people who love them, trying to fill the spaces the sickness left behind. Your mother doesn't complain when you sleep through chores. She says it's better that you rest, better to rebuild your strength slowly. But the strain in her eyes has deepened. She now gathers the firewood herself. Your sister tends the chickens. Your father works longer in the fields. No one blames you. But the gap your weakness leaves is real, and it ripples outward. And there's something else, something less physical. You find yourself hesitating now, to eat too much, to run, to stand in the cold, to touch others for too long. You flinch when your sister coughs. You wash your hands more often. You check your skin every night for signs of rash or warmth. Your body is cautious in ways it never was before. You've lived through something invisible and nearly fatal, and the fear of its return has soaked deep into your bones. Your neighbors have noticed too. They speak to you again. They let you stand near the well, though some still keep a little distance. The old man by the forge greets you by name, but you see it in their eyes, the memory of what you were. The thin boy in the cart, the fevered ghost who lay in the field. The stigma of illness fades but slowly, and sometimes not completely. In towns where plagues have swept through, entire families become suspect for generations. In some places, people refuse to marry into households that once bore the mark of pestilence. Disease clings to a name like smoke clings to cloth. You are lucky. Your illness didn't claim your life or the lives of others, I know, but it marked you just enough to linger in village memory. Even your friends treat you differently now. They ask how you feel before they ask anything else. They invite you to sit and watch rather than play. One boy who used to wrestle you in the hay now passes you the ball gently, as though you might drop it. They are kind, but also cautious, and you wonder, will that ever change? Some days, you feel angry about it. Other days, you feel guilty, like you've taken too long to recover, like your slow healing is a burden. You catch your father glancing at you when he thinks you're not looking. Not with resentment, but with worry. Will you be strong enough to help in the harvest? Will your body last through another winter? You start to push yourself harder, walking farther each day, lifting buckets, even when it hurts. You want to prove something to them, to yourself, but your body resists. It falters, heals in its own time, because healing in your world is not a return to who you were. It is an arrival at who you now are. This new version of you may never run as fast, may never be as strong, may always need more sleep or fear every fever. You are a survivor, but not unchanged. You are whole, but not unscarred. And no one, no doctor, no priest, no wise woman can tell you how long this part lasts. In richer towns, some noble families sent their sick away to heal in the countryside, near mineral springs or mountain air. In cities, the rare physician might recommend wine mixed with crushed pearls or walks in shaded gardens. For the poor and ordinary, recovery means returning to work. Slowly, painfully, day by day, until no one remembers you were ever gone. Your mother begins sending you on short errands. First to the well, then to the edge of the field to call your father in for supper. She says she needs your help, but you can see she watches every step you take, hand on her apron, ready to rush forward if you stumble. You hate the feeling, but you don't say so. Your sister, more practical, insists you help shell peas or hold the bucket for her when she milks the goat. She scolds you less than before, and when you drop something, she just picks it up. The routines are returning, and slowly, so are you. One afternoon, as you sit in the doorway watching the clouds shift, your mother brings a mirror. It's old and cloudy, not much more than polished metal, but it reflects enough. You barely recognize yourself. You are thinner, yes, but also older. Your face has changed. Your eyes seem deeper, wiser, maybe, or simply worn. You run your fingers across your cheek, the faintest mark still visible where the rash once bloomed. It may never fully fade. Just one more reminder that you lived through something most children don't. You hand the mirror back and ask your mother, "Do you think I'll ever be like I was?" She doesn't answer right away. Instead, she sits beside you, sets the mirror aside, and says quietly, "No one ever is. Not after a sickness that deep. But that doesn't mean you won't be well. It just means you'll be different." She doesn't say if that's a good thing or a bad one. You stare at the sky and think about it. The old you feels distant, a memory in a borrowed body. The new you is still settling into your skin, and you wonder if healing changes you. Which version of you will the world remember by the 14th morning since the fever finally broke? Your legs can carry you from the house to the well and back without shaking. You no longer sleep half the day, and your appetite has returned with surprising hunger. There are whole hours now where you forget you were ever sick until the sharp twinge in your lower back reminds you, or your fingers tremble after holding a bucket too long. Still, the change is undeniable. And with that return of strength comes a slow, heavy question. When do you go back to your old life, and do you even want to? The rhythms of the village haven't changed while you are recovering. The hens still scatter at sunrise. The bells still toll from the chapel on feast days. The smell of bread from the bakehouse drifts into your windows every morning. The world moved on without you, as it always does. But stepping back into that current, after drifting so long on the margins, is strange. You are no longer treated like the sick one, but you're not fully treated like yourself either. Your father asks you to gather kindling from the edge of the wood. Just a small bundle, nothing too far. You do it gladly. But when you return, cheeks flushed, breath uneven, you catch your mother watching from the doorway with worry disguised as work, his hands moving over dough that doesn't need kneading. And that evening, your sister insists you rest instead of helping her with the goats, even though you're sure you could manage the task now. When you protest, she only shrugs. "You've been sick," she says, as if that word is permanent, as if it still lives in your shadow. The truth is, you're strong enough to do more now, but everyone around you treats you like you might shatter at any moment. And part of you believes they might be right. It's a quiet truth in your time. Even when the body heals, trust doesn't return so easily. Not your family's trust in your strength, not your neighbor's trust in your safety, okay? And most painfully, not your own trust in your body. You've learned how fragile it is. You've lived inside the limbo of not knowing if your next breath would be easy or your last. I think that leaves a mark. No doctor can prescribe what comes next, because this part, the slow return to life, isn't a medical process. A social one, a spiritual one. You're relearning how to exist among others, how to carry your bucket without someone reaching to take it, how to cough without people flinching, how to join in conversation without everyone going quiet the moment you speak. Even your closest friend, a boy just a year older, now hesitates when you offer to help carry a fence post. Better not, he mutters. Your arms are still thin. You say nothing, but later that night, you grip a clay pot with both hands until your fingers ache, just to remind yourself that you can. The fields are calling now. It's midsummer, and the grain is almost ready. The village needs every able hand for harvest, and your father gently mentions it during supper. Even an hour or two might help, he says. It's not a command. It's not even a request. It's a test. Are you ready? You nod. Because even if your body isn't sure, your mind wants to return. So the next morning, before the sun climbs too high, you walk beside your father down the long dirt path that leads to the fields. Your legs are steady. The rhythm of the earth under your feet feels right. The scent of grain, hot with sun and dust, fills your lungs. It's a world you almost forgot. You're not handed a scythe yet. That would be foolish. Instead, your job is to gather the cut stalks into bundles. You bend, you lift, you tie. And again, it's not fast. It's not elegant. But it is work, okay? That's all anyone asks of you. Your father watches from a few rows away. It's first. Then he stops watching. That's how you know he believes in your strength again. But as the sun climbs and the hours pass, okay, your body begins to falter. Your back burns. Your fingers cramp. Qua. The sweat on your brow turns cold. Qua. And somewhere between the fifth and sixth bundle, a wave of dizziness sends you to your knees. It's not the sickness returning. It's simply your body reminding you. Healing is not a straight road. It's a series of tests, recoveries, and rests. You sit in the shade of an olive tree until your vision steadies. Your sister brings water without comment. No scolding, no pity. It's just a silent understanding of someone who's watched you fight. You're way back to standing, and you realize something strange. No one seems disappointed. No one tells you to go home. No one says you're not ready, because returning to life doesn't mean doing everything at once. It means taking up your place again at whatever pace you can. That evening, at the communal fire, you are invited to sit with the others. No one shifts away. The miller's wife passes you a ladle of stew without hesitation. The old cobbler asks your opinion about a broken bootstrap. Someone jokes about your crooked bundles from earlier, and this time, it's not mockery, it's belonging. You are no longer the sick boy. You are just you, and yet, you are not who you were. You notice things now. It's the sound of a cough, the color of someone's lips, the way a child moves slower than usual. You've become watchful. You've learned the signs of decline, not because someone taught you, but because your own body gave you the script. You read it in fever dreams and in days of silence. This, too, is a kind of doctoring, quiet, common one. In many villages, those who survived serious illness become informal caretakers. They know what to watch for. They remember the herbs that soothed, the foods that helped, the signs that warned. Not scholars, not surgeons, but watchers, rememberers, survivors. And as the fire crackles and the evening cools, your mind drifts to a question you've not dared ask until now. If this sickness had taken me, who would have told my story? And then, now that I've survived it, What do I do with the story I carry? By the time the leaves begin to yellow at their edges, you have returned fully to your daily life, for at least it's the new version of it that your body permits. The mornings are cooler now, your breath faintly visible at dawn, and the fields smell of drying hay and turned earth. Your strength isn't what it once was, but you can carry the buckets without stopping halfway. You can climb the hill behind the chapel. You can laugh without losing your breath. You can even chase your sister across the yard again, though not as fast and not for long. You've rejoined the world, but you return to it, not as a child untouched by pain, but as someone who has seen something most never do and return from the brink. The others seem to sense it, even if they never say it out loud. There is a difference in how people look at you now, not with fear, as they once did, but with something quieter, something between curiosity and respect. Even the old widow, who still mutters charms under her breath when someone sneezes, seems to pause longer when you pass, eyes narrowing slightly, as though wondering what you saw when your skin burned and your body lay so still. Because in your world, few people survive a fever that deep without some kind of mark, not just on the skin, but in the soul. The medieval mind often believed that sickness was not only punishment or imbalance, but sometimes a kind of transformation. You emerge from illness not unchanged, but refined, as if your suffering has scalded away some part of you and left you raw and shining in its place. And yet, there is no ceremony for your return, no rite of healing, no feast or blessing. The world simply folds you back in. Slowly, subtly, you attend Mass again. The priest nods as you pass. There's a candle in your mother's hand and a whisper of thanks beneath her breath. A tea, not to the doctor, nor to the herbs, nor even to the saint whose relic you carried, but to the fact that you are here, alive, able to kneel. The boys who once hesitated now forget to be gentle with you. One elbows you during a game and doesn't apologize. Another calls you slow, and you laugh not because it's cruel, but because it means he's forgotten you were once too weak to speak. That's how you know you're healed, when people stop remembering you were ever broken. But even if they forget, you do not. You carry it with you, the memory of damp straw and cold firelight, of your mother's whispering prayers and your own uncertain pulse, the burn of the leeches, the shivering in the field, the weight of the doctor's eyes as he said nothing, and everything with a nod. You remember what it meant to be helpless, to be feared, to be watched like a candle about to go out, and that memory gives you something few others have, awareness. When the baker's wife begins to limp, you notice before she does. When the old shepherd coughs too often, you bring him water and he doesn't ask why. When your sister looks pale one morning and skips her food, you press a hand to her forehead before anyone else thinks to worry. No one calls you a healer. That word belongs to others, herbalists, midwives, monks. But slowly, quietly, you become the one people ask. Did you feel like this when you were sick? Did your bones ache like this too? What did your mother give you for the shaking? And you answer not with certainty, but with memory, with kindness, with the slow, plain truth that healing isn't magic or mystery. It is survival. It is rest. It is a warm broth and someone to hold the bucket when your hands go slack. Your knowledge is not written. It doesn't come from a scroll or a Latin text, but it is real, and it is remembered. Even the barber surgeon who once bled you begins to nod when you offer a second opinion. Not openly, not with humility, but he listens a little longer now when you speak. One afternoon, a cousin from a neighboring hamlet arrives, pale and sweating, carried in a cart just like yours once was. You see it in his eyes, that lost look, that quiet calculation. Will I live through this? His mother asks if you'll sit with him for a while, since you know what it's like. You do, so you sit. You bring him water. You tell him about the shrine, about the meadow. It's about the moment when the fever finally broke and you realized you would live. You do not lie. You do not promise. But you offer the only thing a survivor can, your story. Because in your world, stories are part of the healing. And your story is no longer. It's about being sick. It's about coming back. It's about carrying wood again and laughing in the yard and eating bread without trembling. It's about the strange peace that comes from knowing you were almost gone chose. Somehow, to stay. That night, as you watch the moon rise and listen to the soft breathing of your household, you finally feel something settle deep inside you. Not relief, not even pride, just stillness. The sickness is behind you. Its mark remains, but it no longer defines you. And as you close your eyes, you wonder, if I had known before it all began what healing would truly cost, would I have walked the same path? By now, you've mostly returned to your daily routine, but something about your experience lingers not in your lungs or your bones, but in your mind. One quiet afternoon, as the wind curls through the trees and the chickens scatter dust across the yard, question rises inside you like an itch. You can't quite scratch. What did the doctor actually know? Not what he did. You remember the bleeding, the leeches, the urinalysis, the slow mutterings about humors and imbalance. But what did he truly understand about what was wrong with you? That you've had time to think, to sit with the memory of that gaunt man in his rough hands and his weathered bag of tools. It strikes you that he never once named your illness in a way that made sense. No one told you if it was a fever from bad air, a punishment from above, or simply a hiccup of your internal fluids. The doctor diagnosed by touch and sight and smell, by listening to your groans and watching how you held your body. But was that knowledge or something else? In the Middle Ages, the word knowledge often meant knowing ancient texts, not necessarily understanding the body. A good doctor could recite Galen, Hippocrates, Avicenna, and even applied those teachings to your symptoms, but your body was still a mystery. The inside of you remained unseen, sacred, unknowable. There were no dissections in most parts of Europe for many centuries, and when they did, happened almost always on criminals or those deemed unholy. They were controversial, short-lived, and rarely public. Anatomy was a rumor, not a science, and the best healers were those who had read the oldest books, not those who had treated the most patients. So when your doctor said your humors were out of balance, too much choler, too little phlegm, he was drawing on theories written 1,000 years earlier in another language, from another land, based on models of the human body that no one had ever verified by looking inside one. The 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow, bile, black bile, each tied to the elements, each believed to influence your mood, your complexion, your bodily functions, your soul. If you were angry, it was yellow bile, melancholy; black bile, too cold and sluggish; phlegm, too hot and excitable; blood, and illness. That was when these fluids were out of proportion, too much of one, too little of another. Doctors in the Middle Ages didn't look for viruses or bacteria. They looked for imbalance, and the tools to correct that were simple. Cut you to drain blood, purge your bowels with herbs, make you sweat, or even induce vomiting. The idea was not to kill the sickness, but to restore equilibrium. That's what the doctor tried to do for you. That's what the leeches were for. That's why he bled your arm and fed you mugwort tea. That's why he pressed his hand to your forehead and muttered about heat to him. You were a vessel of fluids that needed recalibrating. And to be fair, sometimes it worked. Not because the theory was correct, but because the body is remarkably good at fixing itself when it's given time and rest in sometimes. Draining blood or inducing vomiting might incidentally help with certain conditions, but more often than not, these treatments were unnecessary or even harmful, and yet to do nothing would be worse. In your time, doing nothing meant negligence. It meant letting God decide, without even attempting to assist. Doctor was expected to intervene, not because he always knew what would work, but because it was his role to try. Your village never questioned his right to bleed you, because trying something, even if it was based on a flawed idea, was still better than watching a child waste away with folded hands. There were those who knew this. Even then, the best doctors didn't just trust the ancient books. They watched their patients. They noticed which herbs worked better than others. They saw which symptoms were always fatal and which ones passed. But without microscopes, without an understanding of infection, without the ability to measure anything precisely, even the most brilliant medieval physician was left guessing most of the time in many ways. They were like weather watchers, reading signs in the clouds, hoping they guessed right before the storm hit. You think of the priest who gave you a relic, the monk at the shrine who waved incense over your head, the village herbalist who told your mother to mash thyme into goat's milk. All of them believed they were helping, and maybe they did, but none of them knew why or how. And here's the strange thing, neither do you. You survived, but which part of that long, winding chain saved you? The leeches, the prayers, the resting in the field, the herbs, the resilience of your body, the warmth of your mother's hands. There's no way to know, because medicine in your time is not built on experiments. It is built on patterns, on trial and error, on hope, and sometimes on reputation. You remember how the doctor held himself with confidence and calm, even as he applied his treatments with hands that never shook. That confidence was part of the medicine. If you had hesitated, would your mother have allowed the bloodletting? If you'd looked uncertain, would your father have stayed quiet? In your world, part of a doctor's job is not just to treat the patient, but to reassure the family, to seem sure, even if they aren't single quotes. And now that you've lived through the experience, you realize something important. Knowledge in the Middle Ages is not a guarantee of success. It is a posture, a presence, a promise that the old ways, the sacred texts, the healing herbs, the balanced humors, they might be enough. And when they aren't, then it's not the doctor who failed. It's the body, or the patient, or fate, God. You sit with that thought for a long time, because now that you are well, you see how little separates you from those who never recovered. They had the same treatments, the same prayers, the same relics, and yet they did not return. And you did. So was the doctor wise, or lucky? Were you chosen, or simply fortunate? And if another sickness came, one that no one could name, would anyone know more this second time? Stare out at the fields, golden now, ready for harvest. Life continues. The doctor has moved on to another town. Perhaps someone else lies in a straw bed, their body trembling, their mother watching with hollow eyes, waiting for a cure no one truly understands. And you wonder if medicine doesn't know the answers. How do we keep putting our lives in its hands? Someone's uncle in the next village over died suddenly, first with a cough, then bleeding from the gums. A few days later, 2 more were gone, and their bodies were burned, not buried, not mourned in the usual way. Burned. A merchant passing through says it's the Black Death, again, that has been seen in the southern port cities, that it arrived with a shipment of wool or wine or salted fish. No one agrees on the origin, but the message is always the same. It's coming, and when it comes, everything changes. You're older now. The boy who once lay helpless with fever is now nearly a man. You help in the fields. You carry water. You can tie a bundle of hay tighter than most grown men. But that same boy who once wondered if he would live now finds himself wondering something darker. What happens when no one comes to help? The doctor who treated you years ago is long gone. Perhaps he's dead, or fled, or treating the sick in some other village. You don't know, 'cause this time there is no knock at the door. No man in a stiff leather coat. No measured voice suggesting bloodletting and broth. This time, people vanish into their homes. Windows shutter, streets fall, silent. And when someone falls ill, they are not taken to the meadow, or to the shrine, or even to the chapel. They are left inside, alone, sometimes with food at the door, sometimes not. And no one visits, because this time, the sickness kills fast. Too fast, you see it from your own doorstep. It's a young woman from 3 houses down, stumbles outside, barefoot, coughing dark blood into the dust. By the time you take a step toward her, her mother is already dragging her back inside, shouting at you to stay away. She slams the door. You never see either of them again. There are no doctors this time, no priests, no saints' relics waved over the heads of the dying. The local herbalist packs her satchel and vanishes into the woods. A monk from a neighboring abbey arrives, blesses a few houses, and is never seen again. And you begin to understand something the sick never get to say out loud. When disease moves fast, society unravels faster. You thought healing was the hardest part, but now you realize was being seen, being tended. Having someone show up, offer something, even if it was the wrong thing, because now there is nothing. The doctor does not come, not because he doesn't want to, but because even in the Middle Ages, physicians feared the plague more than any other illness. Many simply disappeared. Some locked themselves in stone towers. Some fled to noble estates with clean air and servants. Some, like your former healer, may have truly believed in their craft, but even belief has its limits when it's faced with a sickness that kills in days. And so, your village waits, not for a cure, not even for salvation, just to see who coughs first. You've seen illness before, but this is different. There's no fever that comes and goes, no slow decline. This one is sudden, violent. The body swells. The skin darkens. Boils rise under the arms and between the legs. People go mad with pain, scream nonsense, tear at their clothes, then fall still. Your mother doesn't speak of it. She just boils. Everything water, cloth, utensils. She hangs bundles of dried herbs in the doorway. Sage, rosemary, lavender. The air in your home begins to smell like a burning garden. Wait, it helps. Or it doesn't. But doing anything feels better than waiting. One evening, your father speaks quietly across the table. If one of us falls sick, he says, we'll keep them in the barn. Not to be cruel, it's just to protect the others. No one argues. No one nods either. The silence is the answer. This is what it means to face plague in your time, to choose which part of your family you'll lose, to prepare for death before the symptoms arrive, to accept that help will not come, but you remember something, a feeling from years ago, lying in the straw, your skin burning, your mother's voice humming beside you, a relic pressed to your hand, a barber surgeon's bag opening, the light glinting on polished metal, and as you recall it, a bitter truth surfaces. Even then, they didn't know how to cure you. They just stayed, and staying being with the sick, not running, not abandoning. That was the only medicine that mattered. So now, when your younger brother begins to cough, you do not flee. Your mother prepares a cot in a storage shed. It's dark and musty, but away from the main house. You bring blankets. You set a candle. You boil mint leaves for the air. Your father lays a carved cross beside the boy's head, and you sit beside him, because you know what it's like to wake in the dark, sick and scared, and wonder if anyone will return. You sit there, night after night, counting his breaths, cooling his brow, whispering nonsense stories. He does not bleed from the gums. He does not darken. His fever rises, then breaks. His cough fades. You do not know why. You do not pretend to, but he lives. And slowly, the village quiet begins to stir again. Not everyone made it. One out of every 4 houses stands empty. A cart piled with clothes is burned at the edge of the woods. A new grave mound appears every few days behind the chapel. But you and your brother are still here. And though no doctor came, though no relic glowed, and no herb worked miracles, you remember something essential. Being present is a form of medicine, even in ignorance, even in fear. And as you walk through your village, through a world reshaped by the sickness, you begin to wonder, what does a doctor really do when he can no longer offer a cure? The sickness hasn't vanished, not entirely. The coughing still echoes from one house or another. You walk past shuttered windows where laughter used to spill out. The grave behind the chapel grows longer, its soil darker, heavier, freshly turned again and again. But the panic has faded. What's replaced it is quieter, heavier grief. Yes, but also something close to acceptance. The survivors, yourself among them, now carry a new kind of burden, not just the memory of fear, but the knowledge that you lived, and others, DIDN, single quotes, the question that hums beneath your ribs isn't why you survived, or even how. It's this: what does healing mean when no one could be saved? You start noticing things you never used to. The way your neighbor, whose wife was taken by the plague, now walks with a stoop, as if something in his chest never uncurled. The way the midwife, who lost 2 children in the same week, keeps her mouth tight, her eyes unreadable. The way the blacksmith, once bellowing and brash, now swings his hammer with something like hesitation. No one speaks about what's happened. Not really. There are mutterings of God's wrath, of impure air, of bad stars. But when the sun sets and the fields are empty, silence takes over. Okay. And in that silence, you begin to understand what your village has truly lost. Not just people, but certainty. The belief that anyone could help when it mattered most. And yet, despite that, some people did help. You remember them. The boy who brought broth to a neighbor's doorstep, even when his own hand shook. The young widow who cleaned the chapel steps every morning, even after losing her family. Your own mother who scrubbed cloth after cloth with vinegar and hot water, her hands raw but steady. These weren't healers, not doctors, not priests. They were present, and in a time when no one knew what worked and what didn't. When every cure seemed more like a wish than a solution, their presence was a balm. You recall the moments after your brother's fever broke out. He clutched your wrist and wouldn't let go, even when he was too weak to speak. That touch wasn't medicinal, but it mattered more than mugwort or mass. It reminds you of something you once read, or perhaps heard, whispered by a monk on a pilgrimage. Healing is not always curing. Sometimes it is holding, as you realize, is the secret layer of medicine in the Middle Ages, the part no scroll or scripture can teach, the part no bleeding or cauterizing or poultice can replace. The human part. It's the part done in kitchens and fields and sick rooms. It's not only in apothecaries or monasteries. A mother singing to a dying child, a wife wiping sweat from a brow, a friend who refuses to leave the threshold even as others lock their doors. These moments go unrecorded. They leave no marks in the histories written by learned men, but they're real, okay? And they are what people remember when the fever has passed and the body has stilled. You think about the doctor who once tended you. He bled your arm and muttered Latin. He gave you herbs and nodded wisely. You don't know if any of it helped, but he came. He stayed. He held your hand, okay? And now, years later, that part, the part where he didn't turn away, it was more powerful than any treatment he gave. There's a term some monks use, borrowed from old Greek teachings, passed through the ages. Philia. Not romantic love, but brotherly care, shared humanity. That might be what medicine truly is. At its most stripped down form, not knowledge, not tools, but attention. A willingness to see the suffering and not look away. And this, you think, is why people still trust doctors, even when they can't save you. Because somewhere inside, we all fear that our pain will go unseen, that will vanish behind a closed door, that no one will notice when we fade. The doctor's presents, even if flawed, even if futile, tells us that we still matter now that your village has been changed. Now that you've seen what a world without healers looks like, if you begin to wonder how many cures in your lifetime were simply comforts, how many of the people who recovered, including yourself, were saved not by medicine, but by warmth, by watchfulness, by someone whispering, "I'm here," when the world fell silent. You walk now through a quieter village. There are fewer people, more space, even the chickens seem subdued. But there is something new among those who remain, a kind of attentiveness. Neighbors who once bickered now exchange soft nods. A girl who used to mock the village idiot now brings some fresh bread. Your father, once so stern, places a hand gently on your shoulder without words. You suspect it won't last. Life will return. Noise will rise again. But for now, this hush is sacred. You pass by the house of the cobbler's wife. She died last week. Her husband is alone now. As you walk past, you see him through the window, hunched over an unfinished boot. His hands tremble. You stop, knock once. When he looks up, he doesn't smile, but he doesn't turn you away. You ask if he needs help. He doesn't answer. He simply slides the boot toward you, and so you sit. No words, just shared space. You may not be a doctor, Tom. You may never understand humors, or blood, or stars. But today, you are practicing medicine in the oldest sense. You are staying. And as you watch the evening light stretch across the dusty street, you think, what if this has always been the real cure, just one person refusing to leave another behind? Late in the year, just as the leaves begin to rot underfoot and the skies turn a deeper, stormier gray, the doctor returns. It happens without fanfare. No trumpet, no bell. Just the slow creak of a cartwheel on damp earth and the sight of a hunched figure descending the village path, boot pulled low, horse visibly thinner than the last time. You recognize him immediately, though his face is more hollow than you remember. The doctor who once bled your arm and pressed herbs to your lips now walks as if each step is an apology. His coat is patched at the shoulders. His satchel looks nearly empty. His boots are caked with unfamiliar mud. No one greets him right away. Not out of anger, perhaps out of uncertainty. This is no triumphant healer returning to bask in survival. This is a man entering a village that has survived without him. You are surprised by the feeling that rises in your chest. Not joy, not sorrow, but something more complicated. Because now, years after your own sickness, and months after the plague, tore its way through your neighbors, you see him clearly not as a guardian of health, not as a bringer of wisdom, but as a human being trying to hold something together in a world that often won't let itself be held. The doctor settles in, the old mill house, where the roof leaks and mice nest in the hearth. He doesn't speak much, but he begins to move through the village again, not knocking on doors, but watching from paths, appearing beside wells, nodding at passers-by. Slowly, people return his nods, then his words. Then, one by one, his purpose. A woman with aching joints asks if he has anything for the pain. A key gives her dried marjoram wrapped in linen. An old man with blood in his stool lets the doctor inspect it in silence, eyes fixed on the wall. A child with boils is brought to him under the cover of dusk. And though he admits he can do little, he boils rosemary and whispers something in Latin and sits beside the child's mother all through the night. The doctor's work has changed. Before, it was about pronouncements, diagnoses, the performance of authority. Now it is quieter, humble, less certain, and perhaps for the first time, he begins to ask questions, not to impress, but to learn. He kneels beside the village midwife and watches her crush roots in a bowl, asking which are for fever, which for swelling. He speaks to your father about how he protected your brother and what herbs your mother burned to clear the air. He sits near you one evening by the fire and asks genuinely what it felt like, not just to be sick, but to wait, to wonder, to not know. You tell him the truth, that the waiting was worse than the pain, that not knowing if anyone would come was worse than the bleeding. And the doctor, who once spoke only in firm sentences and clipped diagnoses, simply nods. You ask him where he went during the plague. He doesn't lie. He tells you that he fled to a small monastery where he was promised protection, that he stayed inside for weeks, that he treated monks when he could, but mostly waited, that he felt ashamed, that he returned because he could not sleep at night knowing he had run. This honesty feels heavier than any doctrine, because in your world, no one expects a doctor to be perfect, but to admit fear that is rare and healing in its own way. As the days pass, people begin to come to him not just for treatment, but for listening, to tell him what they endured, to ask him why some survived and others did not. He still doesn't have answers. But now, he no longer pretends to, and that, oddly, makes people trust him more. He doesn't carry new tools. He doesn't speak of miracles. He speaks of effort, of watching, of sitting, of staying. He says medicine is as much about being there as it is about fixing something. That often, the illness wins. But that doesn't mean you don't show up. You begin helping him. At first, just holding jars, then preparing teas. Eventually, he asks you to help observe symptoms, and once or twice, to dress a wound. You're not training to be a doctor, not formally, but something has shifted. He sees that you understand pain, not from books, but from memory. And more than that, he sees you understand how to stay. One day, a woman stumbles into the village from a neighboring hamlet, her baby limp in her arms. She is sobbing, soaked from the river crossing, and crying for help. The baby is not breathing. The doctor is not home. You and your mother take the child, lay him on the kitchen table. You feel for breath. None, but he is warm. You remember something the midwife once said about still breath and heat. You lift him, tap his back. His tiny body shudders in then. The sound, a faint, high-pitched wail. The baby lives. When the doctor returns and hears the story, he says nothing at first. Then he places a hand on your shoulder. You did the most important thing, he says quietly. You didn't wait. And in that moment, you understand what the past few years have given you, not just survival, not just memory, but something more powerful, agency. Because in the Middle Ages, most people rely on others to tell them what to do. Priests, doctors, landlords. But you've learned that in the space where no one comes when the doctor is gone, when the priest flees, when the world falls silent, you can still act. And that is medicine. That is healing. You have lived through uncertainty. You have sat with pain. You have watched death pass by your door, and still you remained, and now, with the doctor back, the question is no longer whether he will stay. The question is, what will you become now that you no longer wait to be saved? There is no ceremony to mark the end of the sickness, no proclamation from the chapel steps, no choir song echoing through the hills, just time passing in its slow, indifferent rhythm. Just the sound of distant hammering, someone mending a roof, the crackle of dry leaves underfoot as you walk to the fields again, and the quiet, resilient return of normal, not the same as before, but familiar enough. This is how the Middle Ages heal. Not with sudden transformation, but with 1,000 tiny restorations, one person at a time, one breath, one harvest, one whispered prayer after another. The doctor still lives in the old mill house. His visits are more frequent now. It's not dramatic, never sudden, but expected. His hands are steadier than before, and his eyes softer. He still uses the same tools: the brass bleeding bowl, the folded knife, the linen bandages. But something in the way he handles them has changed. He no longer pretends they are enough, and because of that, strangely, people trust him more. He speaks now not of certainty, but of attention, not of cure, but of care, and he listens. This is what has changed most. You find yourself among the listeners too. The doctor calls you his apprentice, though there are no official scrolls, no oaths taken before the saints. You are not sent to a university in Salerno or Bologna. You learn in kitchens and corners, by firelight, beside sick beds. You learn when to speak and when to stay silent. You learn when a poultice is better than a prayer, and when a hand on the shoulder means more than either. The work is slow, boring, even washing wounds, stirring herbs, keeping track of someone's fever across 5 long nights, fetching clean water before dawn, listening to coughs and studying rashes, hoping they are not the ones that mean death. And yet, you feel strangely alive in it, because here, among the mundane details, is where healing happens. Not in divine light, not in triumphant return, intending, and bearing witness. You remember your own sickness, now, not as terror, but as a doorway, a long, strange passage into a world where suffering is quiet and constant, and where the greatest act of care is simply staying long enough to be there when the suffering shifts in time. You become someone the villagers turn to before the doctor. You, who once lay in the straw, skin burning, too weak to open your eyes. You, who sat beside your brother while no one else dared. You, who helped save the cobbler's baby with nothing but instinct and memory. No one calls you a physician. That title still belongs to men with letters and robes and Latin, but they call you something better, one who knows, one who has been there. That is what medicine looks like in your world. Not certainty, not prestige, just attention, just presence. And, as the years pass, the world shifts around you. The plague fades. The earth yields grain again. Children grow. Life reasserts itself with its usual stubbornness. But you remain different, because you carry something. Now layered understanding of what health and healing really are. Not a perfect body, not the absence of sickness, but the continued ability to live and love and endure, even when the body falters. That's the legacy of medicine in the Middle Ages. It doesn't promise salvation, doesn't always work. Sometimes it makes things worse, but at its best, it is a promise. You are not alone. And maybe that's what your doctor offered you all those years ago. His thick cloak and tired eyes. Not a cure, not even comfort, just his presence. Just a shared silence in the face of fear. You think about the generations after you, those who will also fall sick, will also sit in dark rooms waiting for someone to come. And you hope they will have what you had, not just a doctor, but a listener. Not just a treatment, but a hand to hold. Not just a remedy, but the reassurance that their pain matters. Because if anything from your time survives, it's after the herbs have tried, the theories disproved. The relics lost it should be that healing begins when someone refuses to turn away. And now, as you walk through the autumn fields, the sun paled behind clouded skies, you look over your shoulder and realize you're not waiting for the doctor anymore. You're the one who shows up, and maybe, just maybe, that's the quiet truth history forgets to mention. In the end, the only thing more powerful than the sickness was the choice to care anyway. Take care. Good night.